Medieval India, NCERT, Chapter number 3, The Chola Empire, from 9th to 12th century. The Chola Empire, which arose in the 9th century, brought under its control a large part of the peninsula. The Cholas developed a powerful navy which enabled them to develop India's sea trade in the Indian Ocean and to conquer Sri Lanka and Maldives Islands. Their influence was felt even in the countries of Southeast Asia. The Chola Empire may be said to mark a climax in South Indian history. The rise of the Chola Empire. The founder of the Chola Empire was Vijayalaya, who was the first feudatory of the Pallavas. He captured Tanjore in 850. By the end of the 9th century, the Cholas had defeated both the Pallavas of Kanchi and weakened the Pandyas, bringing the southern Tamil country Tondamandala under their control. But the Cholas were hard put to defend their position against the Rashtrakutas. As we have noted in previous chapter, Krishna III defeated the Chola king and annexed the northern part of Chola Empire. This was a serious setback to the Cholas, but they rapidly recovered, particularly after the death of Krishna III in 965 and the downfall of the Rashtrakuta Empire. Age of Rajaraja and Rajendra I. The greatest Chola rulers were Raja 985 to 1014 and his son Rajendra I 1014 to 1044. Raja had been appointed heir apparent in his father's lifetimes and had extensive experience of administration and warfare before his accession to the throne. Raja destroyed the Chera navy at Trivandrum and attacked Quilion. He then conquered Madurai and captured the Pandyan king. He also invaded Sri Lanka and annexed its northern part to his empire. These moves were partly motivated by his desire to bring the trade with the Southeast Asian countries under his control. The Coromandel coast and the Malabar were centers for India's trade with countries of Southeast Asia. One of his naval exploits was the conquest of the Maldives Islands. In the north, Raja annexed the northwestern parts of Ganga region in the northwest Karnataka and overran Vengi. Rajendra I carried forward the annexation policy of Raja by completely overrunning the Pandya and Chera countries, including them in his empire. The conquest of Sri Lanka was also completed. With the crown and royal insignia of the king and the queen of Sri Lanka being captured in battle, Sri Lanka was not able to free herself from the Chola control for another 50 years. Raja and Rajendra I marked their victories by erecting a number of Shiva and Vishnu temples at various places. The most famous of these was the Rajeshwara temple at Tanjore, which was completed in 1010. The Chola rulers adopted the practice of having long inscriptions written on the walls of these temples, giving a historical narrative of their victories. That is why we know the great deal more about the Cholas than their predecessors. One of the most remarkable exploits in the region of Rajendra I was the march across Kalinga to Bengal, in which the Chola armies crossed the Ganga and defeated two local kings. This expedition, which was led by Chola general, took place in 1022 and followed the same route which the great conqueror Samudragupta had followed. To commemorate this occasion, Rajendra I assumed the title of Gangai Konda Chola, or the Chola Emperor of Ganga. He built a new capital near the mouth of the Kaveri and called it Gangai Konda Cholapuram, or the city of Chola, conqueror of Ganga. As even more remarkable exploit in the time of Rajendra I was the naval expedition against the revived Sri Vijaya Empire. The Sri Vijaya Empire, which had been revived in the 10th century, extended over Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, Java, and the neighboring islands and controlled the overseas trade routes to China. The rulers of the Shailendra dynasty were Buddhists and had cordial relations with the Cholas. The Shailendra ruler had built a Buddhist monastery at the Nagapattam, and at his instance, Rajendra I had endowed a village for its upkeep. The cause of the breach between the two apparently was the Chola eagerness to remove obstacles to the Indian traders and to expand Chola trade with China. The expedition led to the conquest of Kadaram or Kedah and a number of other places in the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra. The Chola navy was the strongest in the area for some time, and the Bay of Bengal was converted into a Chola lake. The Chola rulers also sent a number of embassies to China. A Chola embassy of 70 merchants reached China in 1077 and, according to a Chinese accountant, received 81,800 strings of copper cash. That is more than 4 lakhs of rupees in return for the articles of tribute comprising glassware, camphor, brocades, rhinoceros horns, ivory, etc. Tribute was the word used by the Chinese for all articles brought for trade. The Chola rulers fought constantly with the Chalukyas, who had succeeded the Rashtrakutas. These are called the later Chalukyas, and their capital was at Kalyani. The Cholas and the later Chalukyas clashed for overlordship of Vengi, Rayalaseema, the Tungabhadra Doab, and the Ganga country in the northwest Karnataka. Neither side was able to gain a decisive victory in this contest, and ultimately it exhausted both the empires. It also appears that the wars were becoming harsher during this time. The Chola rulers sacked and plundered Chalukyan cities, including Kalyani, and massacred the people, including Brahmins and children. They adopted a similar policy in the Pandya country, settling military colonies to overawe the population. They destroyed Anuradhapur, the ancient capital of the rulers of Sri Lanka, and treated their king and queen harshly. These are blots in the history of the Chola Empire. However, once they had conquered a country, the Cholas tried to set up a sound system of administration in it. One of the remarkable features of the Chola administration was the encouragement to local self-government in the villages all over their empire. The Chola Empire continued in a flourishing condition during the 12th century, but it declined during the early part of the 13th century. The later Chalukyan Empire in the Maharashtra area had come to an end during the 12th century. The place of the Cholas was taken by Pandyas and the Hoysalas in the south, and the later Chalukyas by the Yadavas and the Katikayas. These states extended patronage to arts and architecture. Unfortunately, they weakened themselves by continually fighting against each other, sacking the towns and not even sparing the temples. Ultimately, they were destroyed by the sultans in Delhi beginning of the 14th century. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In the next part, we will start with the Chola government on page number 18. Thank you everyone. All the best for exams. Do share and subscribe the channel for more videos like this and keep supporting us. Thank you.